Kellyn. Is it Kellyn Blount?
Yes. Yeah,
oh my
Kellyn.
God. Yeah, that's great to meet you. Do you know Stevie Archer?
I don't. Nice to meet you, though.
Nice to meet you, Kellyn.
This is also another great thing about Addison and I hosting this with LVB and Great Guns is that you guys, a lot of people don't know each other, so you get to meet people, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm Oliver Fuselier, and I'm the managing partner of Great Guns, and this is Addison Capper, and he's the North American editor of LVB. So I think we're just going to get started, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I normally just try to find a little bit of like background on people. Stevie, I'm just going to start with you. So you're the ECD at SS plus K or SS and K, or is it SS plus?
It's SS and K, yeah.
SS and K, that's what I thought, New York metropolitan area. So I want to welcome you. That's really exciting to have you, truly. Iceland versus like unbelievable and funny and crazy, and what an amazing feat. So bravo to you guys. That's really, really wonderful achievement for sure. You must be very excited about that.
I'm very excited about that. Yes, of course. I mean, it's been an amazing little piece of work that was sort of done in a very rapid response kind of way that, we all felt really, we felt emotionally attached to it from the very beginning and knew it was something we had to do. We had low expectations for if the rest of the world would really respond to it, as we must keep our expectations low a lot in this industry. And the response to it's been really remarkable. And it's sort of the product of like a really awesome working relationship with our client, Visit Iceland, who's super creative and is, it's actually the 5th campaign that we have done with them. So we've done a lot of really awesome work with Iceland in particular. And so it was sort of it was not the culmination because we're not done yet, but like it's been really awesome to see how much the world has really reacted to it.
It's amazing. Well, bravo to you. Also, I tried to get onto I don't know if you're an Instagram, I think you're definitely a Twitter gal. I think you had a Twitter, your first Twitter feed was November 12th, 2012.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yes.
Yeah, it was like 25 pages of voiceover, and I forgot what words are, is what you said.
Yes.
Which I thought was so amazing. But also, like, you have such great articles, like the one that's 45 curiosities and anecdotes about flight attendants. I couldn't read the whole thing because I was like, I'm flying to London on Monday, and I was like, I'm not getting on a damn plane. But I love that. And then the dark side of marrying Elvis Presley, the Priscilla Presley story, you tweeted about that. Insane. So I love those little things. I'm just bringing that up, just not to embarrass you, but to say that.
No, I'm a pop culture junkie, and I'm endlessly curious about all of the things in all of the corners of the world. My Twitter is my most public of my social media, and I warn you, if you ever run across the tweet about Vanna White's Wikipedia, prepare to lose your afternoon.
I love it. No, I'm just going to follow you because I really love it. It's really amazing. So thank you. I'm going to now turn to Kellyn Blount. And I want to welcome you again, Executive Creative Director at Preacher, Austin, Texas, right?
Yeah, right.
I love it.
That is
we all love Austin, I would assume, because Austin's just such a great rad place. You had an article that was in 2020 in Ad Age. It was called Creatives Under Quarantine.
Yes.
Oh my God. Where you gave this
you dug it up.
Where you gave this glimpse of a day in a life of you and your business partner, but husband. I hope you guys are still together, and I hope you're still partners.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine if we weren't?
I know, you're like, oh my, you're gonna start bawling, crying, like, oh my God.
I just start crying, like, oh my God, my marriage is over. No, yeah, oh man, that feels like so long ago. And we've come a long way. I will say we've come a long way. But yeah, my husband and I, he is a creative director here at Preacher, on the art direction side as well. And our wild ride through the pandemic with our 2 children was just that. When they came to us and asked us to do that, we were like, yeah, sure. I mean, why not? What else are we doing? And it turns out a lot. We were doing a lot and just getting by. But yeah, at the end of that interview, or the journal that they asked us to do, I think there's a little bit of me in there that says like, hey, I turned to my husband, Jimmy, at the time, and I was like, should we call my cousin? Have we reached that point? And I had a group of cousins out in Oregon. I've come from a very large family, and I have a couple, like in their 20s, younger cousins. And I called my aunt and I said, who wants to move to Austin, Texas during a pandemic? Who is out of work? Who can help us with our children? And it turns out I have an angel of a cousin named Katie, who jumped on a plane and said, that sounds like my kind of party. And she, at the time, the company she was working for was shut down. She was an esthetician, couldn't work at all in Oregon. And she moved in with us, and she's been with us ever since, and has been helping with the kids until today. They both went to school today for the first time, full-time in school. She's has moved on, but she's still in Austin, and we're so grateful for everything that she did. But yeah, I mean, we would still be living that turmoil if she hadn't helped us. It was quite, if you haven't read the article, Stevie, you should, if you're looking for a laugh, you should read it.
Well, I don't know about you, Stevie and Addison, but I think we should start writing the series My Cousin Kate, or My Cousin Katie. My Cousin Katie. I think we should start writing that. I mean, I think everybody has that story, right, Stevie? I would assume.
Yes, well, and similarly, I have a large family as well, and I went the other direction during COVID, where I called my parents in the midst of all of that and said, I got to get out of the epicenter of this, and moved down to North Carolina for about 3 months with my North Carolinian family. So I have similar travails.
Oh my God. Well, we've all made it through in some way, shape, or form, and I think for the better. And what a great treat that you have an angel out of this, Kellyn. That's amazing.
Oh my gosh. It's silver lining.
Right? Silver lining. So many silver linings, I got to tell you. So we're going to get started. The first question, if you guys are ready. Again, welcome. I know time is very valuable, so here we go. What is a happy accident that played a part in leading you to where you are today? And I'm going to start with Stevie first.
Well, I think the happiest accident was sort of a continuation of happenstance that happened over the course of a couple of moments. I did not know that a copywriter was a job. For most of my life growing up, no one in my family, my immediate family, worked in advertising or had jobs that were like remotely close to advertising in any way. So two things happened as I was entering my freshman year of college at UNC Chapel Hill. One, I saw the movie What Women Want, featuring controversial actor Mel Gibson, where he played an advertising person who could read people's minds and make ads for them. And I went, well, that's a job. Like, of course, it was like the reading people's minds part was not totally applicable. That was probably the first time that I processed that, like, there's people that create ads and that's a job. And then when I joined UNC as a freshman, had every intention of following what most of my family had done and going into some sort of medical field of some kind. And instead happened upon a course listing for the advertising track in the School of Journalism, and saw that there was a copywriting class and that was what Mel Gibson was doing. So I put those two things together and pretty quickly like course corrected. So I lucked out that I went to a college that had an advertising program and had that type of course that I could then figure out what this was. And that sort of set me on the path to copywriting as a career. And the second lucky accident was at one of my very first internships at a very small advertising agency in Raleigh, North Carolina. I met an art director named Vanessa Witter, who happened to be sort of my created kindred spirit. And she actually got me a job at Mullen following leaving Rocket. And she advocated for me and literally got me hired. She begged and begged and begged and pleaded. And talked them into giving me a job as her partner. And again, that sort of allowed me to go into advertising as a career, because she fought for me to be her partner. And she's still in advertising now too. We've since she's moved to LA and I've moved to New York, but she's probably always been my most significant creative partnership. And I got just totally lucky that I happened to meet her.
Wow. I mean, so you can say that you can credit Mel Gibson and Vanessa for like putting you where you are today on the map. See,
yes, let's not give Mel Gibson too much credit.
Okay, I agree. Okay,
let's not tie our ship to that particular.
Let's give it to who was the female actress? Let's give it to her. She was fabulous. I forget who the actress was, but anyway, no, let's don't. You're right. Anyway, thank you for that. What about you, Kellyn?
Well, I guess I would say that there was a moment when I was actually living in Raleigh as well, working at an agency in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I met my husband. And I was very happy. I was very happy. I liked it there a lot. I had previously been out in Texas and had kind of made an escape at one point. And I was like, okay, I'm back on the East Coast. I'm from the East Coast originally. I'm from Long Island. I had family nearby in Raleigh, and I was at a great agency, great culture, great mentors. And I met Jimmy, my husband, and he was ready to go. He had the itch. And not for any reason against the agency we're at. He was where we were. He was also very happy. It was just, everyone, all of us weird creative people, we get an itch every couple of years. And he had reached that point. And I, thinking I was being sneaky, said, okay, well, we'll make a list of 5 agencies, like the best agencies that if they call, we'll answer, but we're not going to reach out to them. Let's just see if they call. And he made a list, and Preacher was on that list. And I kid you not, like, I think I thought maybe he had reached out. I was like, there's no way this could be real. But they reached out within like 30 days, Preacher, wow, of us making this secret list. And they reached out to both of us. The recruiter reached out to both of us, and my website and, my portfolio was all under my maiden name. So they didn't even know we were related or not related, married. We're not related. And they both started recruiting us separately, and it was very funny. And, we were like, hey, by the way, we are in fact married, and I just have a different last name at the moment. And they offered us both jobs, and my husband immediately was like, yes. I was like, wait, hold on, this is not what I meant to happen. But we took the jobs, obviously, and we've been here ever since for about 6 years, I guess next week. And we love it here. It's definitely a happy accident on my part, where I think that this really was the perfect intersection of the types of clients I wanted to work on, but with the culture that was really important to me. Preacher has been able to provide both those things in abundance. So it really Texas became home again, which is very odd for a New Yorker to say that, or an East Coast girl. But it has, and we've carved out our little space here, and have started our family and grown within the company here. And it's been a wild but very fulfilling ride.
Wow,
so very
that's really
happy.
Yes. Well, I mean, at least you chose Austin.
Yes,
so...
that was important, because I'd done the Dallas ride, and there's a lot of wonderful things about Dallas too. But I left for a reason. And
exactly.
Yes, thank God Preacher is in fact in Austin.
I love it. Well, good. Well, thank you both for that. I'm going to let Addison do the next one.
It's also an insane coincidence, by the way. I just wanted to pipe up the fact that you both got hired at exactly the same time into the agency that you both wanted to go to. Anyway,
I mean, no. I mean, really, they get 2 for 1. Are they crazy? No.
Oh yeah.
I know they do.
And also, it's an insight to how recruiters work. They really just like hit that list at the agency.
Yeah. Anyway, did you do anything in childhood that you think has kind of shaped yourself as a leader today? It's a bit of a corny question, but it's an opportunity to talk about things that maybe you did as children that now kind of maybe you learned some lessons from that, now that you're both ECDs. And we'll start with you again, Stevie.
Well, again, I have two things that I think sort of like probably inherently led me to where I am now, and or contributed to how I view it, being an ECD at an advertising agency. One, I grew up with a mom who both my parents worked. My mom worked my entire life. I actually saw her, through osmosis. Her job was working in physical therapy, and she ultimately came to run the physical therapy department for a very large orthopedic practice in my hometown. And so seeing her sort of lead teams of people, talk about what that was like at home, talk about, being in orthopedics specifically as a healthcare field is very male dominated, dealing with what that required of her, navigating that, and sort of having the ambition to even do it. Because I think for a long time, she wasn't sure that she wanted to have a position like that. She could have easily just continued to work as a physical therapist and make that her life and career path. And so it's always sort of been having a role model as a female leader in my own house who was doing that job and talking about it all the time. It made it feel very much like, well, this is just logical. Like there's nothing that I can't do because my mom has already done it in her own field. So I think that contributed a lot to, just even imagining I could do a job like this. Yeah. And the second part is I played sports. I played soccer growing up a lot. So I've always been a part of teams. I've always enjoyed being part of teams and kind of understanding like how people work. There were times where I was playing, I played sweeper a lot, which I'm a very small person, so playing a defensive position wasn't normally very typical. But in that particular position, my job in a lot of cases was to direct what the team was doing, because I had vision of the field and could see what was happening and could give people heads up about what was coming. And so I think that was, as a formative experience, one of the first times I was kind of in charge of helping other people understand where we were going and what we could be doing, and having to like vocalize that, in a sports scenario at least. And that's contributed to how I sort of work and think now as a creative person, even though there is very little soccer involved.
No soccer anymore.
No soccer anymore. I'm out of shape, Addison. Thanks for pointing that out.
Fair enough. And you, Kellyn, how about you?
I have two answers as well. I think the first for me was summer jobs. I always had a summer job from like before it was legally okay for me to have a summer job. In the part of Long Island where I grew up, there's a lot of farm stands. So as soon as I could count change, I was sent to work at the farm stand in my town. And it forced us all, I mean, my brothers and sisters as well, to be independent for ourselves. And we had to be at a job at a certain time. We had to show up, we had to do the job and do it well and put a smile on our face and talk to strangers and be in sometimes scary situations where, an 11, 12-year-old might not really want to be doing those things. But my mom was really good about setting that perspective for us, that like, if you want something, you have to earn it. Like, sure, she was more than capable of giving us $10, $15 to go to the movies if we wanted it, or, all those things, but she didn't feel like that's how it should go. She felt like if we were going to spend money, it needed to be partly our own. And she saw the value in forcing us out of the house and going to do uncomfortable things and, start living that sort of life, earning your way in a bit, like, not anything overly serious. But it definitely forced me, especially to just figure things out on my own and hold myself accountable to my decisions and what I was doing. The second part is I'm from a huge family. I'm one of four. I'm the youngest of four. And then my father passed away when I was quite young, and my mother remarried to a gentleman who also had 4 children. So there was 8 of us total. I was the youngest of all of them. And I think that also just made me into a quick leader. and an independent one where, again, I just had to figure things out. I was often lost in the shuffle being the youngest. I was often one who was maybe doing things years before my older siblings did them. But I liked it that way. Like that, I mean, I wouldn't change a thing. It was so fun and it was a very fulfilling upbringing in that regard. But yeah, I think there's like a weird advantage of being from a giant family and then also being the youngest of that giant family. So I would say both those things.
Yeah, I guess being like part of a giant family is essentially a ginormous team, I guess, right? But a bit more brutal probably in some sense.
We were very competitive, all my siblings and I. It was even with everything, with what we were doing, whether it was sports or school or, you know, any other activities, but also with our parents, with my mom and my stepfather. We were very competitive for their attention. And I don't know, there's probably years of therapy that needs to be unpacked there, but at the time it worked out.
Cool. Thank you both for sharing.
Love that. The power of words is more important than ever today, as we all know. What is the most inspiring and what is the most annoying word or words that has stood out to you in the past year or so? Kellyn, we'll start with you.
Okay. The word that gets me the most inspired is a bit odd, but it's problem. If there is a problem, I love it. So, something is wrong with me, but I don't know if it's like a weird unhealthy savior complex or what, but I feel like when people present me with a problem, whether it's a brief or a personal problem or a big mess of a situation type of problem, I have just an adrenaline rush. I love it. I love getting in, digging in, solving things, working collaboratively with other people. I can't think of a more inspiring thing. And we've had our fair share of problems over the last couple of years. I think everybody has, in different shapes and forms. But yeah, it really, I think, unlocks something in me creatively. I love a challenge, and I love seeing the outcome, because it always works out. Whenever there's a problem, if people approach it with positivity and collaboration and grace and allow themselves not to get buried by it, it always works out. And I'm the type of person who likes to have something to look forward to. And when I get a brief or when I'm presented with something to solve, my mind immediately goes to like the moment after I've solved it, or like the joy we're going to have, you know, once it's on air, or once the person is now happy where they might have been stressed, or, you know, whatever it might be. And that's just like a personal, like, fireworks show for me. It brings a lot of joy. So yeah, problem would be the first part of that. And then the word I'm tired of or I get most frustrated by is push. Do one more push, or go back and push a little bit more. That attitude, especially with creatives, I think isn't probably the best. I think that creatives push more than most people already. They're already doing a little bit more, especially the mental gymnastics of it all, and how they show up daily in most tasks that they're doing. So to tell a creative person, go do one more push, is kind of, in a way, saying that everything they've done up to this point wasn't a push. And I don't believe that. I think what the better approach, or the way I've seen more positive outcomes, is by more getting in there and inspiring, like trying to find, just having more of a conversation. If you know that we need to do another push, because sometimes there's real talk of like, we're not there yet, we got to do another push, rather than saying that, more get in there and try and find the real thing that you want them to push against and inspire it, try and stoke it in them, let them get there, but with your nudging and help, rather than just the blind, go do another push, go do more. I can't think of a more stifling bit of feedback personally. I know I don't respond to that sort of feedback. So yeah, I think that's the thing. I wish we could all kind of just as like a group shift to no more pushing, more just stoking and conversating and, you know, just trying to inspire more in that way.
Right, that's great. I love that. I know isn't there a saying with problems? It's like we should all have such a problem, you know. Like it's like, so that's the positive, you know, aspect of that. It's really great. I love that. That's great. And push brings to mind for me, like when I was a kid, like, I mean, if anybody was around a pool or a lake, I grew up on a lake. It's like somebody tried to push me off the boat or off a dock. I mean, it was like, you know, I was
scary.
You know, it freaks me out. So I agree with you with the push thing.
I had like a physical reaction when you said push.
Yeah,
I literally was like, no, don't say that word. Right?
It's physical.
It's
You're right. It's emotional. Yeah. What about you, Stevie?
Oh, well, Kellyn had awesome answers, which are like, because I agree. I could not have agreed more wholeheartedly with the way of looking at the world as a set of problems to be solved and looking at that as a positive thing, or that the word push is like the most infuriating bit of feedback. I will try to build a little bit on that, on those really incredible answers. So I think an inspiring word for me is counterintuitive. And I don't know that I would have said this 3 years ago in the same way. But I think the word no is a really powerful word and concept that can be, while it sounds incredibly negative, because it's literally a negative, is actually, I find it really inspiring how people now, in the cultural upheaval and the moments that we're all living in, the massive change that we're all experiencing and the way we want things to be happening moving forward, when people kind of say no to a situation that they're in and then say the way things are going is no longer the way things should be, I'm going to say I don't want to do that or participate in that system anymore, and I'm going to go do something else now, I think is incredibly inspiring. We see it in so many different situations and scenarios, starting with mass movements for people to march out in the streets and say, I'm not okay with where we're headed politically. Massive movements to stand up for bodily autonomy, with most recently the overturn of Roe v. Wade. We're seeing it in workers and labor and people rising up to say, I no longer want to participate in a system that is going to exploit me, and I'm going to work to make that different for myself and for other people. And I see it even in small things, especially with younger employees and younger folks who I'm blown away by how people that are younger that I've talked to who are yet to even enter the industry are saying, I will not work at a place that does not treat me with the respect that I deserve, that does not look like me, does not attempt to welcome a person like me, pushes me to, burn myself out or do those things. And people are setting boundaries for themselves, which can feel to some oppressive or can feel like, wait, what's happening here? But it's actually saying, no, I imagine a better version of what this all can be. And I'm going to say, I'm going to do that now. And I find that to be incredibly powerful. And I think in terms of the day-to-day work, sometimes to echo what Kellyn said, the most powerful thing is finding out what you're not supposed to do. Don't go over there, go here instead. So know this, here's where our answer is. No can be a really powerful constraint to then imagine something else. And so I find that to be just one of the most inspiring things people can say, though it is admittedly quite difficult to hear it when you're getting client feedback or hearing it in terms of your own ideas. But I often tell my teams too, I'm like, we're raptors testing fences. We hear no, we figure out a new way. We figure out a new solution. And that's what pushes us forward to do something else. And in terms of words that I find like I'm over, or there's so many, like, I think, culture is moving at the speed of like lightning, and there's certain things that you hear and you're like, oh my God, please, like, not that word, please don't say that. It's kind of already probably moved on a little bit, but I hate when words get like overly politicized. Working at SS&K, we're an intersection of political strategy and creativity. So I'm immersed in that universe quite a lot. And the word woke it's been like so weaponized, and it's been so polarized, and so, it's such a controversial word, and it's used as in such a derogatory way, and it diminishes, you know, it's meant to diminish, and it is just like such a, I feel a visceral reaction when I hear, you know, words like woke or words like triggered or words like those types of things that try to define and compartmentalize what people think and feel in a way that is meant to tear them down and isn't productive and move us all forward. So that's the one that stands out to me the most. I also really despise the word chuggy, which was sort of like 2021's version of like what millennials are. And like, it just sounds gross.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. That's funny. I mean, really, both of you, great answers. That's amazing. I have to tell you that the word no prior to the pandemic for me was one that I would either bulldoze my way, bully my way through and go like, I didn't hear what you just had to say, like deal with me. Or I would like, try to find a way around it. But, since the pandemic and certainly after your explanation, no is such a great word because it does, for me, gives me a moment to stop and just think for a second. It's like a pause for me now. Like, I just know, it's like, because I don't accept it as no as a negative. I accept it as a very positive, inspiring word. And I love that. I think there's a lot of people that are going to look at hear both of these answers and really think about these words in a different way, which is always just so exciting and inspiring to people, So thank you both for that. It's amazing. What is something that you do regularly that you don't do regularly any longer since the pandemic? What happened in the pandemic that like changed what you used to do or how you used to do things? Kellyn.
I think for me, it's an overall clarity, a little bit to build on what Stevie was saying, that this idea of no and all these new boundaries that people have, and the self-realization of what's right for us and what we expect from people or situations or jobs, whatever it might be. But before the pandemic, I'm a rule follower. Like I have always been the person where it's like, you tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. You tell me to be somewhere, I'm going to be there. And it's just the way I was wired of, this is what we do in life. We work hard and we show up and we participate. And even when it's uncomfortable and, and in a lot of ways, yes, to all those things, we should still do those things. But I think before the pandemic, I projected a lot of those things on other people as well, versus just worrying about me and how I showed up. I expected a lot out of people, maybe too much out of people around me. And what the pandemic taught me is, especially in, within agency life, is that people are really good at being accountable for themselves. I think we assume that everyone needs our help all the time. And the immediate thought was, oh, no one's going to really do the work anymore. Everyone's going to be home and they're going to be on their own time. And are they really going to get the job done? And not only did people get the job done, they did it exceedingly well. And in a lot of cases, better than they were doing it before the pandemic, especially creatives. Sometimes creatives need different spaces. We all realize like, oh, maybe you don't need to be in an office with your headphones on blasting in your ears, or maybe work can look a little different. Maybe hours can look a little different for people. Days of the week can look a little different for people. And I was just so impressed and blown away with how everyone, specifically at Preacher, showed up without me putting those expectations on them. Even they just did it. And I think that was a really big learning process, just not just for me, but for a lot of leaders in the industry, that people can do this without us, breathing down their necks, or having unrealistic expectations of people. So I've really tried to not not only kind of release some of that, but also for myself. I am now at a place too where I'm less afraid, not to like break rules, but I'm definitely more willing to advocate for myself, or make like, if I need to be somewhere, I will be there. If I don't need to be somewhere, I won't be there. And I don't worry so much about the stigma of like what other people think, or, you know, oh, if I zoom into that meeting, are people going to be upset, versus in being in person. I approach things more of what's right for me, what's right for my family, or what's right for the project, or what's right for the team, in a way that is comfortable for me. So it's like it's kind of confusing to break down. And honestly, when I try and think of like trying to define it, it's really hard, but it's just been more of a mental shift. It's more just getting right with how I make decisions. I feel like I've always been a good decision maker. I'm very quick to make a call, but I think I've like worked that muscle out a little bit more in a way that's healthier.
Wow, I love that. You know, it's ironic, but today on the news, at least in Florida, you know, the big headline was, today we wait and see how corporations, you know, respond to how many people don't want to change their lives, who want to stay at home and continue this work-life balance. And I think it's going to be a big awakening to corporate America, and I hope it is. And the other part of, you know, what you just said was, you know, the pandemic really allowed everybody, it made you stop. Like if you made 50,000 decisions a day without ever thinking about the repercussions or what those were, which we all do, you had to stop and think about that. So I think that's what you just inspired, is this way of like, you know, stopping, taking, you know, taking stock in who you are and what you want in life and what's important. And I think it's a big lesson for everybody to do that and continue to do that. So thank you for that. It's great. What about you, Stevie? What's something that you do regularly now that you didn't before the pandemic? Why?
Well, I will echo some of Kellyn's responses, which were, I actually used to, as a creative person and who worked in advertising agencies, I actually drew a very hard line physically between work and home, to the point where I made it a rule very early in my career that I would not blur things at work with my home life. So I would physically stay in the office and finish tasks rather than come home and bring my computer home and work from home as much as I humanly could. And even when I was working longer hours or had things to do over weekends, I would physically put myself in an office. I'm a holer upper when I like need to do creative work. So I like find the most like windowless room and shut myself in and like do the work and just get it done before bringing it home. And now that is completely out the window. Would have never thought that I'd be the kind of person who would sort of be able to embrace working from home. You can probably even hear my husband talking right now because he's on a call too. So we're both just like home people now. So that's a massive difference. I think what's been fascinating is like, I can literally feel my brain being rewired as this is happening. Prior to COVID too, I think a lot of conversation happens around this particular part of the creative process is like, well, how do you really bring all the work together? How do you really like do the process as we used to know it in agencies, where you have a big room, a big war room, and you can put things on walls and you can sort of hash things out and see the physical work, sometimes printed on paper. Even when I was working in digital agencies, we were still doing some form of that. And that need to like physically be together to like mark up things and work on things in that way was part of how I operated as well. And now I find that I think and visualize work in Google Docs, and I can see it happening in a digital form, and bringing teams together happens in just a different way. And even putting together large integrated decks and all of that type of thinking now happens in a digital format and a digital space, and using those tools instead of doing it in the more analog ways has been a big shift. And it kind of takes like, I can feel the neurons firing differently. I can feel the muscles memory sometimes pulling me back the other way, but learning instead to use Slack and tagging things in Google Docs and communicating and Zooms and all of those things to like coordinate how that new creative process works has been really interesting over the last 2 years. And now I can't imagine doing it the other way. Like I can't imagine losing all of the collaboration and functionality we have and going back to some sort of like physical printed analog version, because it's just changed how we're all able to work together. And then my other non-work behavior is I have a thing called ice cream walks. Started like during COVID, started walking a lot more. Living in New York, you walk everywhere anyway, but you know, you didn't realize early in the early stages how much you're sitting, how much you're like tied to your Zoom screen, and really found that like I just had like a physical craving. My husband and I, after work every day, would literally just walk. There wasn't anything else to do that was safe anyway, so you could kind of just keep walking until you got tired and wanted to turn around and come home. And the recent development has been that we do the same behavior, but now we target it to streets that have multiple ice cream stores. So that when you get to the point where you're tired of walking and would like some ice cream, you're never far away.
Oh my God,
and if you
I love
do it
that.
really well, then you can have a very far ice cream place that you go as your like, human achievement. And then on the way back, you have a much closer ice cream place that by the time you've reached that one, you can have ice cream twice. So,
you know what they're saying? They're saying like, oh my God, here comes Mr. and Mrs. Sampler again. Oh my God, I love that. That's genius.
I've been on a lot of ice cream walks, by the way.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, and still do very regularly.
It's a movement. We're starting it. You and me, Addison.
Yeah.
No, but I'm from LA and we don't walk anywhere. So I bought a Wolf scooter. I live right by the beach by the Atlantic Ocean, and there's this fabulous ice cream shop, and I literally every day, it's really pathetic, but I get on my scooter. Why wouldn't I walk? I don't know. But anyway,
you're just doing an ice cream scoot. It's fine. We'll accept that.
Just right, ice cream scoot. Okay, so did you have a mentor, and who were they, and what have they taught you? Stevie, why don't you go first?
Oh my gosh, I've had so many mentors. It has taken a village, really. Is sort of the truth. In order to get me into the human form that I exist in today. I would say that probably, one of my mentors is the CCO at McKinney in Durham, North Carolina, Jonathan Cood. He has been I've known him since I was a junior in college. I interned at McKinney when I had literally no idea what I was doing. Like I didn't know where to even be most of the time, much less like what, operating as a real functioning member of an advertising agency was. And he happened to be the group creative director on Audi at the time. And so I, was sort of reporting to him, and ultimately several years after I left school and worked other places, ended up working at McKinney when he was the CCO. And so I've now known him for, 20 years. He helped me personally make a move from McKinney to New York, has been sort of the consistent advice giver in terms of all things in my career and creatively. Is always sort of the person that, I can ask dumb questions to. When I was taking my, first ECD job at SS&K, was the first person I, spoke to about what that would mean for me and what it would look like. But outside of Jonathan, I've had, like I said, many mentors that are too numerous to count. Many of them, fellow women in advertising too, who I often turn to because they have similar experiences to mine and they've gone through it before. Liz Paradise was a creative director at McKinney, Ellen Steinberg as well. And our head of production at McKinney was a fabulous woman named Regina Brizzolera, who is like one of the most talented production people I have ever had the pleasure to work with, who is, also given me amazing advice as a leader and, how to manage a team. And Lisa Hughes, who was a account director at McKinney, or a group account director at McKinney, has also been sort of a pivotal person in my development particularly as helping me understand, how clients think about work and what that means for me as a creative, and how to navigate difficult situations and do it professionally and, powerfully, and also has been a really great friend and all of those things. So like I said, it's been a lot of people, and there's probably some that I'm leaving out, but those are the people that have had a significant, impact on, how I think about work and my career and how to be a good person in the midst of all that.
I love that. That's great. I think just it's important for young people to hear that mentorship is a really great thing, and that, if you don't have one, you don't know what it is, find out and get one. I think it's really important. So that's great when people hear this. Hopefully that you'll inspire them. What about you, Kellyn?
Well, the one that probably made the biggest impact is Jimmy Bonner at the Richards Group. So when I graduated SCAD, I went to SCAD in Georgia. I had the worst book. My portfolio was awful. And the only reason why the Richards Group took a chance on me is I knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. And they said, okay, yeah, she can intern, one of like 45 interns at the time. And my first internship, I was on the Home Depot account, did everything I could to try and stand out. At the end of the internship, they said, okay, well, we don't really have a spot for you right now. Do another internship. And I said, okay, cool. Did another internship, ate a lot of soup. and then 2 weeks before my second internship was going to end, still no job on the table. Jimmy Bonner, who was a creative director at the time with his partner, Rob Baker, they were a younger creative director team, hadn't made their group yet. So the way the Richards Group was designed was it's like a bunch of groups. It's no longer this way. It's, done a whole remodel. But it was a bunch of different groups, which essentially operated as like individual agencies. Like each group had their own accounts and they had their own leaders and, all the things. And Jimmy and Rob were, given the blessing to start to hire, but they couldn't hire, super expensive people. They could hire affordable people. So Bonner saw me, saw what I was doing, was apparently kind of like watching from the sidelines. And then right there at the end, the 2 weeks left, he kind of swooped in, showed up at my desk one day and said, let me see your book. And I like maybe said 2 words to this man, the 6 months of my internships. And I very scared, gave it to him and was like, oh God, what is this person going to think? And he was like, okay, so like, you're going to have to redo this whole thing. And I was like, okay, wonderful. And he was like, think of 3 brands that you are passionate about, 3 things, and I'll swing by tomorrow and you can tell me about them. And I said, okay. So I did that, picked 3 brands or 3 things. I think one of them was chocolate. So that's how inexperienced I was. And he was like, okay, you're going to make 3 new spec campaigns entirely from scratch over the next couple of weeks. And I didn't sleep. He helped me tremendously. He, sat next to me, told me what to do, told me, inspired me with layouts and ideas. He hooked me up with some of the best writers in the agency, and he, friends of his at the time who he would turn to and say, hey, can you write some headlines for her? Can you sit with her for an hour? Can you concept with her? He just opened door after door after door after door for me. And after those 2 weeks, I had a whole new book, and he brought it to Stan Richards at the time without me knowing. He took it over to him, and Stan said, sure, if you want to hire her, you can hire her. And I got hired. And then from that point on, he kind of just took me under his wing and showed me the way, him and Rob both. I give a little bit more credit to Bonner because he was the art director. And they gave me just incredible opportunity over the next 6 years, working right into them. I got to spend countless hours concepting with them directly, just 2 really wonderfully talented creative directors. Got to watch them present, got to watch them craft. I mean, it was really special, and I wouldn't have even a speck of a career without them. So I always say, like, my first 2 or 3 years at Richards was basically like my ad school, my graduate program. because they really did teach me so much. But then from there, I spread my wings and I left, and I actually went to Raleigh, like Stevie, and I worked for David Baldwin, who was also at McKinney. And I worked at Baldwin and he was a whole different type of mentor for me. Wonderful in different ways. I mean, he was a writer, so, you know, not quite the same mentorship that I got from Jimmy as far as like the craft side of the making side. But David Baldwin is just an incredible leader. And he's like a little Buddha. Like he just drops all these like little bits of like, this is how you should do this and approach this way. And he loves to help and inspire, and he likes to watch people around him succeed. And it's just incredible how he leads and what he's created there. So he's another mentor for sure. And it's still one of my biggest cheerleaders in all the ways. And I call him and bug him constantly for advice today. So I agree, like, find these people and never let them go. Never let them go, because they are just special and unique, and they can really help guide the best of us through this chaotic world that we're in. And I cherish both of them very much.
Wow, really, really great answers from both of you. I think you guys, in your future, I see the Kellyn and Stevie podcast happening. It's the inspirational hour. I really do. You guys are complimenting each other so well. I have one bonus question, and it is, we want so much to fit in, particularly as kids, like you want to fit in so much. But as you grow up, you kind of lose a little bit, not a little, you lose all of your identity in some form or fashion, right? So what is the one thing that makes you stand out today? Like maybe that you lost, or maybe you didn't lose, or maybe you found it. But what is that one thing that makes you, Stevie, stand out today?
Oh my gosh, that is like this is the hardest question. This is the hardest question. All the other ones were easy compared to this one. It's very hard for me to be self-reflective. You know, I'm usually very self-aware when it comes to my like flaws, in terms of the things that are like, that stand out about me. One of the things that I've, as a person, that I think stands out is, I value, and I'm honest kind of all the time. And I have tried to find ways to be the person in the room who says the thing that maybe a lot of people are thinking, but are not able to either say, or they're too caught up in trying to, you know, make it sound, you know, palatable to other people. And I learned early in my career in advertising that, like, whenever we were trying to game conversations too much, or people were obscuring information, or they weren't just really saying like what they really felt, it felt artificial. It felt like we weren't really getting to the bottom of what we were doing. We weren't really like being honest with each other. And so I try to, as clearly and succinctly as possible, just describe why something makes me feel a certain way, what we can do about it, what we should be doing, and be the person in the room who can bring truth to the situation, because I often find that then helps us find direction. As a creative person, I've had people remark that I think they have this expectation that creative people are like, we're all like living in some like fantasy land of magic and wonder and like imagination, you know, that we're just flights of artistic fancy is what drives us. And I tend to be quite the opposite. I'm extremely strategic, and some would say analytical, but that comes for me from knowing that what we do is not just flights of fancy, that it is work that has to do a job, and it also has to survive a gauntlet of rational thinking. So it has to be bulletproof, and it has to be figured out, and it has to make sense, and it has to really solve the problem that it sets out to solve. And what does that can be irrational, but in order to get there, it has to be grounded in something very real. And I've had enough people say no to things that they didn't understand or they couldn't figure out why you were doing it, that I've trained myself over time to build cases for things and to make things survivable in situations where I know that's the scrutiny they're going to face. And so I tend to be extremely strategic about how creative work is approached so that it frees everyone else up to do crazy. Because crazy only gets bought if someone thinks it makes sense.
Right.
So I also tend to be, I think that defines how I, operate in the world. And then my third thing that I will forever be an advocate for is I absolutely love pop culture and media and all the ridiculous stuff that is happening in the world. And some people will say that it's like silly or meaningless or it's just drivel or whatever. But the fact that like Venice and Don't Worry Darling and Chris Pine and Harry Styles and Florence Pugh
We're
are
all just Googling that.
I am like, this is what I live for. Like, this is it. Like, this is narrative at its finest. This is culture. This is like, I will know the ins and outs of every celebrity moment that has happened since I, joined this earth until now. And we can talk about that for days. And
oh my God,
nothing makes me happier.
I can attest to that, because if you scroll through her Twitter feed, like, you will learn so much about what's in the brain of Stevie Archer. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. That's really brilliant. What about you, Kellyn?
Okay, so the thing that I've always had that I think at times I've tried to suppress is I have the most obnoxious loud laugh on the planet. I am so maybe not on the, because my sister's is louder, like embarrassingly loud. But yeah, I mean, I laugh all the time, especially when I'm uncomfortable. It's silly. The ice cream man at the beach when I was little nicknamed me Giggles because I could not get my order out because I would just laugh so much. But yeah, I people tell me to this day in the office, they can hear my laugh from downstairs in the soundproof room. I just am very, very loud in that way. And in the past, I've tried to make that maybe be a little less. And I'm just like, why? It's fun. And especially now that we're all starting to get back together. And it's important because on Zooms, there, I don't know. I mean, I laugh sometimes, but being in person with each other and people being like, whoa, Kellyn's here, is I think important. And laughter this business is very serious, which is very odd because we're making ads, which is not rocket science as far as like the severity or like, how critical it is that of the things that we are doing. But yeah, it's fun to have fun. And I like my laugh, even though other people might not. And then I think like spiritually, or what maybe other people might say about me, is that I tend to be pretty confident when, even though I'm afraid of everything. Like everyone here makes fun of me. I'm afraid of snakes. I'm afraid of spiders. I'm afraid of airplanes. I'm afraid of everything. I have like that weird thing where it just, I constantly think everyone's going to die. But I'm very confident in a lot of like situations where most people aren't, especially in, I think to echo what Stevie was saying, in conversations. And like when I walk into a room, I think a lot of people can be really intimidated sometimes with the people at the table or, what the subject that's being discussed or whatnot. And I just have this weird superpower where I don't see it that way. I feel like everyone has a voice and everyone can provide value, and nothing drives me crazier than when people aren't saying a thing. Everyone's kind of circling around it, just like Stevie said. And I do feel like I have the power or, the ability to say it. Sometimes I don't say it as well as maybe I should. And that's the Long Island in me. But I do my best. And over the years, I've certainly tried to master the art of saying the uncomfortable or confronting the uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, just the other day, an art director told me, they're like, oh, you always seem so like cool and calm and confident. And I'm like, oh, I'm dying inside always. so I'm glad that it appears that I am that way. But yeah, I mean, some of that is true. Just don't let a snake go by or I'll lose my which
Oh
I
my
don't know
God.
why I live in Texas with that fear. But yeah,
Exactly.
so I think
Well, I love
that's
that.
my.
I
Go
love
ahead.
it. Thank you both, really. Addison, do you have anything to add to?
No, thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure to listen to you both.
Yeah, you guys are really truly inspiring. I think, you know, it's what Addison and I love about this series is that, you know, when people do watch it, it may be that one young creative, whether it's male, female, whoever it might be, and they may hear something from a leader in our industry that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to hear, because people ask questions about, you know, the corporate stuff. We talk about people as humans, and you guys leaders as humans. And I think if just one person hears any one of you speak, I think they're going to be so grateful. And I think you were inspiring. Thank you so much, both. It was great to meet you both. I didn't know you, so thank you so much.
It was so nice to meet you. This was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And I can't believe how many, I don't know how much this was by design, but how many things we must have in common from both working in North Carolina agencies. And my mother happens to be from Long Island, and most of my family lives here. So I am pretty confident what we have identified is there's some sort of Long Island, North Carolina, like incubation happening in
definitely.
Advertising. For sure.
It's the Kellyn and Stevie, Archer show. I can tell you it's going to happen.
Let me know. We'll do it.
I know, really. Well, you guys are inspiring. Thank you. Go have a great day. And thanks for smiling and being with us. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.